France's Constitutional Court says much of the recent immigration bill that passed thanks to the support from the far right is against the law. As is customary for new laws passed by Parliament, it went to review to determine whether or not it is in line with France's basic laws. Even Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin, who pushed for the bill to pass, acknowledged recently that certain measures are manifestly and clearly contrary to the Constitution, in particular those added to appease the far right. Our guest on this topic to help us understand what this all means, Renaud Foucard, a senior lecturer in economics at Lancaster University in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us. Is this decision a surprise?
It's not really a surprise, and it's actually a pretty clever move by the French government, because what they decided to do at the end to get the law approved was to say yes in the last minute to a lot of very symbolic asks from the conservative right and the far right. But what the Constitutional Court said today is that this is not a proper way to adopt the law. So for a lot of those laws deemed unconstitutional today, it's not so much about the principle of the law, but about the process that was used to adopt it. And so in that sense, it's not so much of a surprise. The very big topic that has been really deemed unconstitutional is the yearly debate on quotas of migrants in the parliament. But for the rest, it's really the original law, almost as dreamed by Elisabeth Borne and Gérald Darmanin a year ago.
So that means that what is left of the law that has not been kind of barred?
So the main objective claimed by the law was to make it easier for the government to deport migrants who were deemed as illegal by French courts. So this part is staying. Then there was a second part, which was about making it easier to regularize people who are working in jobs that are called intention, so for which there is a shortage of labor in France. And this has been slightly reduced during the debates to please the conservative right, but this is still staying, meaning that it will be easier for France to keep those migrants who are bringing value to the economy and who are deemed necessary to the workforce. What is left on the side is really a lot of symbolic measure, and I think something also very important, which is the new laws for the students. So France is one of those countries that is still treating largely non-EU students the same as the French one, and there were rules introduced in that law that were making it much more complicated for migrants to come in French universities, and so that's pretty good news for the French higher education system, because they're going to keep the possibility to be attractive for foreign students and to attract bright people in the French higher education.
Is the government going to try to repass this law or to do something more with the bill? Is it going to try to get another version passed that's more in line with the Constitutional Court and the way that a law is supposed to be created, as you were talking about earlier?
I think today Emmanuel Macron must be very happy, and I think there is absolutely no appetite for him to pass again the parts of the law that he was disagreeing with in the first place. So all of these were concessions to appease a relatively small group of members of parliament, which is Les Républicains, so the conservative right. But the main goal of the majority now is achieved. So perhaps those will try if they get a majority. It will also become, I think, a very important topic in the European elections. So you will hear a lot about the judges against democracy, so very Berlusconi-like or Trump-like debates, I suppose, from the far right, from the Rassemblement National. But in terms of what Macron wanted to get, of what Darmanin and Borne wanted to get, I think for them it's almost 100% victory today. And I've been very critical of the way they try to appease the right to get a majority in the end. But in the end, this was a very clever move because they keep what they wanted to have, and what he didn't want has been deemed illegal.
So we're talking, my last question for you is that, there's a fear of the far right, getting closer and closer to power in many countries across the Western world in general, including here in Europe. Many of them saying that, the real danger is that these parties will get into the institutions and that they will be able to change the way that governments rule. Is this a case where we're seeing the opposite happen?
Well, in a way, yes, in terms of the result of that law. But if you think about the storytelling that can put the far right to power, I think it's always a bit dangerous to do what the government has been doing, which is to play a bit with their ideas, then to put them on the side and use somehow the Constitutional Court as a way to avoid talking too much about that. I think the Rassemblement National will be in a pretty strong position now for the next election, saying the will of the people has been blocked by the judges. And it's always a very powerful political message to push. So it's clearly a short-term victory for the government, but I think in terms of the story that the far right like to tell about the people versus the judge, democracy versus some unknown establishment, I think this might be somehow something that benefits to people like Marine Le Pen.
Something to look out for in the future. Thank you so much for answering our questions. Renaud Foucard, professor in economics at Lancaster University. Thank you so much for joining us.